present, Nick Mooney, Steve Brown, and myself, Dana Powers. Members remotely present, Jack Nicolai. Members absent, Susan Hines will not be here this evening. Okay, then go ahead, Steve.
Okay, I move at 6:34 p.m. to go into closed session pursuant to Wisconsin statute 19.851F, considering financial, medical, social, or personal histories or disciplinary data of specific persons, which, if discussed in public, would be likely to have a substantial adverse effect upon the reputation of any person referred to in such histories or data or involved in such problems or investigations. This is dealing with open enrollment applications, talking about open enrollment applications, open enrollment in applications, and open enrollment out applications.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor, Jack,
Aye.
Nick,
Aye.
Steve,
Aye.
and Dana, aye. Motion carries, and we are now in closed.
Okay, at 7:01, in our open session, I make a motion to approve the open enrollment denial as presented, um, due to space considerations. Second.
All those in favor, Jack,
Aye.
Nick,
Aye.
Steve,
Aye.
and Dana, aye, and the motion carries. Okay, so we will jump right into,
Need to adjourn.
please.
I make a motion to adjourn the special session at 7:02 p.m.
So moved. All those in favor, Jack,
Aye.
Nick,
Aye.
Steve,
Aye.
Dana, aye, and motion carries. Okay, I am calling our regular school board meeting to order at 7:03. We have board members present physically, Nick Coloni, Steve Brown, and myself, Dana Powers. Board members remotely, Jack Nicolai. Board members absent, Lisa will not be joining us tonight. Administration present physically, we have Judy, I'm just gonna do first names, if you don't mind, Connie, Ryan, Eileen, do we even mention? Okay. And then administration present remotely. Okay, nobody is remote, visitors, we don't have any, so, okay. Stand and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Agenda, anybody?
A motion to approve the agenda as presented.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor, Jack,
Aye.
Nick,
Aye.
Steve,
Aye.
and Dana, aye, motion carries, agenda is approved. President's report. I don't believe I have anything specifically to report. What's the date? We have graduation. That was amazing. Our farewell to Eileen and the send-off to everyone at the end of the year was great. Amazing ice cream. So it's all really good. So, happy summer. Okay, clerk's report, correspondence?
There's one item of correspondence. It's actually a card from Dr. Hanson. I shall read it. The card itself, I'll read what the card says and I'll read her comments. The card says, "The world is so much nicer when people are like you. People who bring so much joy by special things they do." And Dr. Hanson wrote, "Dear members of the Salem School Board, thank you so much for recognizing my retirement through your generous gift of planting a tree in my honor. Like a tree, the roots of Salem are tight within the ground, and from that, beauty and strength bloom with each year that passes. Your thoughtfulness means a lot to me. Educationally, Dr. Eileen E. Hanson."
Thank you.
Thank you. That's all.
Great. Nick, do you want to pretend to be treasurer tonight?
I'll try, except the only thing is I cannot see the hyperlink for the checks and all that kind of stuff.
Neither one.
And I know, but I can see the treasurer's report, so I'll do that one.
Range. Okay, I can do it, or Steve, I'll do it.
Okay, so I can do the treasurer's report.
Yep, go ahead.
Right. The ending balance for the general fund cash account is, I go all $500.
So you read each. you read each,
And yeah, that is so
yeah, of each one,
236,000.
yep.
Okay, yeah, okay, and then from each, yep, then credit cards, yeah, gotcha. The general fund cash balance is $236,560.86. The credit card account ending balance is $7,243.10. The EBC Flex and HRA cash account ending balance is $4,637.88. The capital improvements fund ending balance is $13,073.51. Petty cash at $400 ending balance. Local government investment pool ending balance of $918,477.14, for a grand asset total of $1,180,392.82. Second.
All those in favor? Jack?
Aye.
Nick?
Aye.
Steve?
Aye.
Dana, aye, and motion carries. Do you guys have any questions on any accounts payable? Okay, Jack, any questions on accounts payable?
No.
Okay, I move to approve the, accounts payable bills, starting with check number 2019009. Sorry, I'll start over, 201900694. Through check number, and this number is different, so I wonder if this is account change, but it's 69297. There's two different, those like there's two different check payables. Just go with it. Okay, good. Ending in 69297. For a fund summary total of $1,140,452.95.
What are the dates of each check?
That's Oh, is it? Okay, all you need is the date. So May 23rd, 2020 through June 19th. So you don't need check.
I have a check on this as well, yes.
Oh, so we're good then?
Yep.
Anyway.
What's the total we can set out there?
$1,142,452.
Okay.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, great. Jack?
Dana, I hear you very clearly, thank you. Aye.
You're welcome. Nick?
Aye.
Steve?
Aye.
And Dana, aye, and motion carries. Oh,
Miss Lisa, good gracious.
Not just for that.
okay, let's move right along here. Minutes of the regular school board meeting.
I motion to approve the minutes of the regular school board meeting dated 5/26/2020 as printed and or amended.
Second.
All in favor, Jack?
Aye.
Nick?
Aye.
Steve?
Aye.
Dana? Approved? Next.
I motion to approve the minutes of the special school board meeting dated 6/2/2020 as printed and or amended.
Second.
Oh, nice job. I totally just blanked. Jack?
Aye.
Okay, Nick?
Aye.
Steve?
Aye.
And Dana, aye, motion carries. And lastly, the special school board.
Motion to approve the minutes of the special special school board meeting dated 6/10/2020.
So,
Second.
all those in favor, Jack?
Aye.
Oh, yay, Nick?
Aye.
Steve?
Aye.
Dana, aye, and motion carries.
Do we
Do we have any public comments? We do not receive it, okay. For all those listening, make sure that you send in your public comments to Diane Deegan prior to 2:30 the day before. The day of. Okay. Bye. Okay.
So, next section, we did a little bit of a juggling of the agenda to give our visitors a little bit of an opportunity to get out here earlier this evening. So, the first information on our agenda will be with, Lisa Watson from here, and she's gonna give us a little bit of a financial update. Thank you for joining us this evening.
Hello.
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 So you can go ahead if you like, and then if you want to screen share, then we can pick up your presentation.
We'll see if it works.
Yay.
Okay. I was asked, hello everyone, it's been a while since I've seen you guys. You all are the same since I think I last presented way back in, well, it was 2018, I guess it was not too long ago. And your last borrowing was actually 2015. So I was asked to review what your debt situation is for the district. So I got just a couple of slides to show that. You're a little bit more unique in terms of your debt position, I'll just say that. First of all, you have one borrowing that is levied inside the revenue limit. What does that mean? That means that dollars that come from taxes and state aid that are under the revenue limit get paid out for this debt payment. And this is for non-energy related projects. It's only about $90,000 a year, and it's paid off in 2034. The rates are actually kind of high for today's market, but that's one debt issue that you have. This is actually 2015 debt issue. Part of it was paid out of revenue limit dollars, and then part of it was paid from levy outside the revenue. So additional tax levy above and beyond what you are levying for your operations through the revenue. Hopefully that makes sense. So you have two debt issues. One that was for energy projects. So this is actually related to the previous slide. One borrowing, some of it paid for energy projects, some paid for non-energy projects. The energy projects, you're allowed to levy a tax outside the revenue limit. So above and beyond that limit, which is through Act 32, it's actually gone now. We don't have that ability to do that anymore. But you took advantage of that back in 2015. And we amortized that a little shorter, so it's paid off in 2021. So that blue, you have one payment in 2019 and one payment next year. The rate on that is 3%. Then you have your facility referendum. I'm trying to think of when you have a facility referendum borrowing from 2011. We refinanced that debt. And that final payment was this year. So actually the balance is zero. You no longer have any facility referendum debt. Finally, what else is levied above the revenue limit is your non-recurring referendum to exceed the revenue limit that you had passed back in 2019. So that's kind of the third piece of debt that's levied above the revenue limit. It's not debt, it's an actual tax levy, and it's going to pay for operations. But like I said, it's a separate levy. So for planning purposes, we need to think about what, when that goes away, what is the future gonna look like? And that's why I just put that question mark there, because that's something we can talk about later. But know that your last levy for the referendum was in 21-22. I'll stop there and see if I have any questions.
Nope, makes sense.
Make sense?
Yep,
Okay.
carry on.
Okay, so the next slide just talks about where we are with current market interest rates. My favorite slide. This actually goes back to 20 years. And we are at the lowest interest rates in recorded history. COVID caused a spike. That upper box in the right-hand corner is a 1-year snapshot. You can see what COVID did to interest rates, but they're still extremely low. And something that we've been watching, and we watch your debt for refinancing purposes. It's something we watch all of Wisconsin school debt. And I'll tell you, we're doing a lot of refinancing. So the next slide, don't freak out, it's a lot of numbers. You know me, I'm gonna give you a lot of numbers. But I just wanted to run a refunding. What would it look like if we refinanced your debt and we were looking at your 2015 loan? And the bottom line is right now it does not make sense to refinance. The savings on the very right-hand side after refinancing is only about $2,000 or $3,000 a year. I think we could wait it out and possibly get more savings and get closer to the call date. The prepayment date is out in 21. So I'm gonna keep watching this, and if there's a reason I think that maybe it makes sense, or maybe there's a little bit more savings, I might, I'll definitely let you guys know. But right now, I think the savings doesn't justify. It's only about $25,000, and the cost involved. Actually, that's after costs. But I think we might be able to get more if we wait it out. But I just want you guys to all know that I'm watching your debt for savings purposes.
Okay, so you're saying that you do not recommend that we refinance now, but we could potentially going forward?
Yes.
Okay, got it.
And then I put a couple of slides in here. This is kind of jumping off topic, but it's related to your tax levy. So this is a visual of what I just talked about before. You have your revenue limit tax levy. You have your energy efficiency levy, which is above and beyond the revenue limit. And then you have your referendum debt. So as a school board, you should understand that your total tax levy is $7.1 million, which doesn't mean much until you say, what does it mean to my tax bill? What does it mean to me? That's what we really care about, right? So the simple math is just taking that $7.1 million divided by all of the property value, coming up with a mill rate of $7.48. And when you talk mill rate, the easy way to do that is just move the decimal over 2, $748 and $100,000. And remember, you're a K-8, so you have to add on to that the Union High School District that you guys connect with to get the full K-12 mill rate. Your mill rate has been flat over the last 7 years. A little bit of a decline last year, a little bit above the K-8 average. When you look at your neighbors, you can see kind of where you fall. Not on the top, not on the bottom. But that shows you where your mill rate is, your neighbor K-8s and the state averages. And then I just threw a slide in here. I think it's important to know what your referendum history is. So again, that first one there in 2019, that was the last time you went to referendum where it passed. And then in 2017, so you had 2 successful referendums in a row. And then you go all the way back to 09 and 08. So this is more just for your information, in case you would get asked a little bit about your historical referendum.
Were there referendums this spring from other districts and did they pass?
I was just on another board meeting call, literally like half an hour having this conversation. Yes, there were 28 debt referendums, and Baird worked with most of them, and we had a 100% passage rate.
Wow.
100% of the referendums we were working on passed. Never happened before.
Okay, so you think that people are more inclined to approve referendums now that they understand that they have more control?
Yeah, we have seen a trend over the years, but what surprised me was we were in the middle of a pandemic. And either people got out to vote too early with absentee and didn't realize what was happening with the pandemic, the enormity of how it was gonna hit the economy. Certain voting groups may not have gotten to the polls because of the pandemic. So we didn't have maybe as good a turnout, or we just have great support of Wisconsin schools. So there's lots of 3 reasons I think that we may have had so much success.
Any other questions? Back next week?
No.
All right, well, we really appreciate you joining us this evening. I'm sure we'll be in touch as we look at potentially that kind of a looming deadline for the referendum falling off. And we'll definitely be asking for your help on that time. So, thank you very
Sounds
much.
Thank you.
Take care, guys.
Thank you.
Hey, thank you.
And then at this point, we have another guest visiting us from M3 Insurance. I have Brianna Hillenbrand to give kind of an update on where we're at, especially as it relates to our health insurance. So,
Perfect.
Brianna, are you there?
I am. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Hey, well, I wish I could be there meeting all of you for the first time. This is a new situation for all of us, so I certainly appreciate that you were able to have me join virtually. I'm Brianna Hillenbrand. I've been at M3 for 16 years. I've been in the industry for 20. I've had the pleasure of working with Connie for many years, and she's still putting up with me, which is good. But as she said, I just wanted to give an update. Obviously, we're in an interesting market right now, so I will go through a few slides just to bring us up to speed on where we're kind of sitting with our health insurance program right now, a little update on COVID, and then some other ideas moving forward. You can go to the next slide. Perfect. So I've had a chance to talk with our WPS rep, and I did request some reporting information to be able to give you a bit of an update. So right now, and please keep in mind, there's always about a 90-day lag when we're talking about claims. So we're always looking in the past to kind of talk about our claims picture. But our plan is currently running at about a 110% medical loss ratio. So that is elevated. We kind of ended the year last year at a slightly elevated medical loss ratio as well. A target loss ratio in order to receive a medical trend increase. So where we would like to see our program is probably closer to the 88% or 90% loss ratio range. Does everyone understand what I mean when I'm talking about loss ratio? It's so the premiums we're paying in, so the district and the employees, it's that premium amount we pay in, and then what WPS is paying out. So right now, WPS is paying out a little bit more than we're paying in. Most of that, and this is not strange, this is how it goes really in every group, but about 50% of our claims cost is being driven by 9 members. We have a few high cost claimants that are generating the bulk of our claims cost. And as I mentioned here, they're falling in a category that's called diseases and disorders of the musculoskeletal system and connective tissue. I'm not able to get in-depth data, unfortunately, from WPS because of HIPAA. So I have a little note down there explaining that. But when I tried to press them for a little bit more information, you know, these members and these claims are fairly serious and are definitely claims that could not have been prevented through any type of wellness or any other kind of program. So as a reminder, that's, you know, that's why we have insurance, but I'm really hoping that we can monitor this over the next few months and maybe see, you know, a better prognosis for some of these claim costs. Any questions on this slide or about kind of the claim update?
No.
I think we're good.
So I just wanted to just, so one of the reasons why we're not able to get that data is once you give below 100 subscribers, the specific broken out information could, in a smaller district, for example, allow somebody to start to figure out who those people are. So they usually don't release a lot of information unless you're kind of above that 100 mark.
Yep, that's exactly right. Mhm. Okay.
Wasn't there a point this past year that we were over the 100 mark for a while? Did I think about it at a board meeting?
It's a good question. I think we teeter.
Yeah, we're very close, but we're not over. So I think what, if I remember the last time I looked, we were in that 90, you know, low 90s range.
Yeah, we're so close, and it would be great to get over that because WPS actually has a pretty great reporting package that provides a lot more detail, I would say, than some other medical carriers. So hopefully that means we're hiring more, right? Getting some more members.
Maybe we just need to reduce that incentive not to take our insurance.
There you go, Connie.
That'd be very popular on my part.
Like I said, I'd like to give a bit of an update on COVID-19. I'm sure it's on everybody's minds. I could actually talk about this for hours, but I know you don't want to hear it and you have other agenda items. But we have seen a reduction of about 20 to 35% in incurred claims during the months of April and May due to the stay-at-home order. You know, this isn't surprising. You know, we were planning for this. When I talk with my risk management team, we're trying to get a better prediction, which we'll share with you moving forward, of, you know, what the next maybe, you know, 5 to 12 months are going to look like. You know, we saw this, of course, dip or reduction in incurred claims. A lot of you know, planned surgeries were postponed. A lot of this will be accounted for, you know, it's just going to hit at a different time. So we're really going to have to watch and see how that's going to impact renewal. That is a question I did pose to WPS as well to make sure that, you know, they're prepared to share with us, you know, what the impact of COVID is going to be on our renewal. So more to come on that. As you can imagine, telehealth visits have become more widely utilized. You know, for the last, I can't even remember, 5 years or more, when telehealth visits were starting to become popular, you know, it just wasn't utilized. We would educate on it, we would talk about it, but I was actually just on a call today where there was an individual representing Freighter who said that in the last 2 months, they've had 70,000 telehealth visits. It's just staggering. And I know that they're doing some, trying to get some reporting and some survey work done. And from what they have seen thus far, people are having really positive results. Some people are actually being more honest in their telehealth visit than they are face-to-face. So it's not to say that face-to-face will be replaced, but moving forward, I think we should be prepared to see, the telehealth visits more widely utilized, as well as the health systems and the health carriers really advising people to utilize it more, in the next year and probably other years to come. So I found that to be pretty interesting. Something on pharmacy, early data has shown that a spike in pharmacy claims in March and likely into April to account for individuals moving to the 90-day fills. We're already seeing that even out, but we did see a pretty drastic spike in people rushing in, as you can imagine, to get their fills. So as we monitor the claims, we'll take a look at pharmacy and see again, we're still thinking that that'll even out. This last piece I think is pretty important. This last bullet point, the decreased usage of preventive care. Been reading more and more and we're in touch with the carriers and the health systems all the time. We don't know the true impact yet of this, obviously, but for people that were unable to get in and have, let's say, some cancers detected or diagnosed, people who had to postpone colonoscopies, mammograms, we're really going to have to monitor this and see if some of those things that have gone on, not undetected are going to lead to more specialty care down the road. So these are just a few highlighted bullet points that I thought would be interesting to share with you, that could potentially be impacting our plan. But like I said, we'll continue to watch as more of the claims come in and monitor that and get more of an update that we can discuss closer to renewal. Okay, perfect. 2021 medical renewal. So that is set to be released by October 1st, if not a little bit before. WPS has confirmed that they're using a 9% trend when calculating the 2021 renewals. So again, that medical trend that I mentioned before, we want to see our medical loss ratio, closer to maybe an 88 to 90%. And if we were in that range, we could expect something around a 9% renewal. By getting the renewal, released by October 1st, that still sets us up to have plenty of time if we choose to do a market check. I know that we did that. I was kind of just coming on to start working with you, and we definitely wanted to look at the market. We were running a bit high then, so it still made sense for us to stay with WPS. But that's definitely something, I'll keep my eye on and discuss with you to determine if it's appropriate for us to take a look and make sure that our program is going to work for us given the renewal. A couple of things that I just wanted to bring to your attention that are really, I think, becoming much more of a hot topic in school districts. Definitely heading into 2021 and 2022, we understand, you're heading into your next biennium budget. It's going to be tough budget. We don't know what the state and federal funding look like yet. So something we've been working on a bit more with our districts at M3 is taking a look at self-insurance. I'm sure you're aware of what being self-funded means. Right now you're fully insured. So if you were self-insured, that would mean Salem School District would be taking on the risk, right? You would kind of become the insurance company. We would help you through that process. But I think of it as, instead of having everything bundled with the fully insured, meaning when you're with WPS, they take care of the claims processing. They take care of working with the pharmacy benefit manager. They have the administrative costs. Everything is kind of built into one package, and the insurance company is taking on the majority of the risk. When you're self-insured, I talk about it as kind of being like a la carte, right? So you're now shopping for your network, what providers you want to work with. You're working with a CPA, third-party administrator, to handle your claims. You're working with a pharmacy benefit manager to manage your pharmacy. We obviously play a huge role in helping you put that together, but that could be something we could look at. It doesn't mean we need to move it to it, but I think it would be, a good idea, not this year, maybe the 2022 renewal, when we think more of the COVID impact will really, ring true. That's something we can have in our back pocket to take a look at. Level funding is on the same order as self-insurance, but I call level funding self-insurance with a training wheel. You would have an extra layer of protection where you wouldn't take on as much of the risk, financial risk. So level funding is also designed for groups that are more your size, because like we said, it's kind of a baby step into self-funding. So that's a program we can look at too. The other piece is captive. I'm not sure if you're familiar with co-ops, cooperative across the state. M3 has started every one of the education cooperatives across the state. I work with the C3 co-op. And what that basically is it's districts coming together to have buying power to purchase medical insurance. So everyone comes together and you're looked at by the insurance company as one big group, but you can still have your individual plan design. You really have some way, but you're all coming together to form a larger risk. The captive is the same thing, but it's actually, you're accomplishing that to be self-insured. So the captive is very similar. So it would be districts coming together to be self-funded, purchase medical insurance, but there's something called a captive layer that protects all of you, similar to like being part of a cooperative. I just wanted to do kind of a high level overview of that. If we're interested in looking at any of these options, definitely dive deeper, and I can spend more time kind of describing what these look like, and we can obviously put together a financial piece. So I just wanted everyone to be aware that you really have a lot of options, and I think we're in good shape. So.
Great.
Brianna, Steve Brown here. What kinds of feedback have you gotten from staff with some of the changes that were made this past year as far as choices on the insurance plans?
Yep, I'd say it was pretty quiet when we first made the change. We had people at the meeting coming up to us and happy about it. There were maybe a couple individuals that had some challenges, I think, in our retiree group. So we were working with them one-on-one to get those resolved. So working with them and obviously working with WPS. But overall, and Connie, I welcome you to chime in too. We haven't had, a lot of pushback on that. I think people are really happy to have the option.
Yeah, early on, I think I had like one kind of issue, and it was kind of one of those kind of an odd situation, and I think we managed to work through that, but honestly, I've heard nothing since. I think that it will be interesting to see as we go into this next go-around, if we stay with the Arise WPS congregation, if there are people who move to Arise, either because of economic situation or because of the experiences of other employees, that are participating in Arise. I have no idea if that will be the case, but it'll be kind of interesting to see if that happens. Right. So, anything else? All right. Thank you very much. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody. I hope to see you live someday.
That's you.
Thank you.
Sure I will, Brianna.
Okay, bye.
Thank you.
So we would move back into action items, and the first item but aren't actual open enrollments. So if you recall, once a student applies for open enrollment, in our district, they do not need to reapply every year. They just become our students. So there's an assumption with all of these students that you see listed up here above that these students will be returning in the fall. But one of the things that, as we discussed earlier this evening in our closed session, an open enrollment in student can go back to their home district at any time. It doesn't, I mean, obviously it's much more convenient if they do it within the beginning, at the beginning of the school year. But anytime you have open enrollment students, they can return to their home resident district at any time. But going in, if these students stay, you can see down at the bottom, we would have 71 students who are currently slated to return to Salem in the fall that would be open enrolled in students. Okay, and then you can see on the side the districts that those students are coming from, the grade levels those students are coming in, and the overall totals. So then the next slide is our open enrollment out. So you can see, again, the districts that they're coming from, the grade levels that they're coming from, the ones that are leaving us, and then down in the corner is that total of 181 students that will, unless something changes, will continue open enrolling out next fall. So these would be Salem residents that have open enrolled out of our district currently. Questions on that?
Connie, when these applications, and I'm speaking in general terms, when these applications come in for parents who want their children to enroll out, are reasons given?
No, there's no requirement to
Okay,
increase.
that's right, thank you.
And with these students, they have open enrolls out several years ago.
Sure.
So,
So these might just be
just,
a continuation of the open enrollment.
And of course, we all know, I think one of the things we've talked about though is it would be good to get more information on why these occur. But sometimes if students who live kind of on the borderline, and so that other kids in the neighborhood may be split, and other kids in the neighborhood go to a school that's nearby, and so students may opt for that. But then a myriad of reasons. Sometimes students will go to another district because their parents work in that district, so it makes sense for them to be in that district.
If a parent separates, well, let's say you have two parents that separate, you have one parent living here and another one living in a different area. I see some pretty far off places on there. And they have primary custody over there, although one parent's still in district. Does that appear on this report then like that?
So that student would not need to open enroll. A student is a resident where either of their parents live. So if one parent lives in Brighton and one parent lives in Salem, that student could attend either place as long as a resident, so they wouldn't have to apply for open enrollment.
Okay.
So going on to the next slide. So these would be new. So if you take a look at the chart that I have up here, we have on one side the current open enrolled students at the different grade levels, and then the new applications. So one of the things that might look a little more confusing about this is, for example, if you look at grade K4, you have 12 students open enrolling to come in. You have 11 students open enrolling to go out with a total of 16 applications. So the question is, what's the difference there, the 11 to the 16? A student coming in, applying to come in only counts as one because they're applying to your district. But a student can apply to up to 3 districts during the open enrollment period. So when you see, for example, under K4, you have 11 students, 16 applications, there are likely students that are, there are students in there that may have open enrolled to 3 different schools, may have open enrolled to 2 different schools, and that's why that number is higher. So if you go then down to the bottom, what you see is we have a total of 28 students open enrolling to come into the district. 34 students open enrolling to go out. Now, that is a difference. There are more students open enrolling to go out than to come in, but the gap between the two is smaller than it has been in past years. Again, what is the reason for that? It's hard to say, but it's a good thing, especially as you look at, for example, your numbers in, PK, kind of primary world. So K4, typically that K4 world is when you're going to see your first enrollments, because families will make a decision to open enroll, assuming that they're going to spend the rest of their educational years, at least through elementary school in that district. So it's good to see that there are actually more students in K4 enrolling to come in than enrolling to go out. That's a really good sign. Questions about that? So earlier this evening, we met in closed session. If you recall, back in January, the board approved the number of openings that they had at each of the grade levels and the number of openings they had in special education. So the only reason a district can deny a student for open enrollment would be, for example, if your district did not have a 4K program and you had a student who was open enrolling to go to a 4K program, you would have an ability to deny. You can deny a student if you don't have space in the particular grade level that the student applies for. You can deny a student if you don't have space in the particular special education. Sometimes just numbers of special education, sometimes it can be actual program. So for example, we contract out for physical therapy. Because we contract with another provider, that we would not open up to students who would receive that service, because we don't have somebody on staff that can do that. So overall, this evening, when we met in closed session, there would have been some students that were denied due to not having room in special education, and there would have been a small number of students who would have been denied due to not having room in that particular grade level. So that was already taken care of in closed session. What remains is for the board to approve, and hence the recommendation to approve the remaining open enrollment applications for the 2021 school year, not denied or not already denied during the special board meeting on June 23rd, 2020 at 6:30 p.m., so earlier this evening.
I motion to approve remaining. I motion to approve remaining open enrollment applications for the 2020-2021 school year, not denied during the special board meeting, June 23rd, 2020, 6:30 p.m.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor, Jack?
Aye.
Nick?
Aye.
Steve?
Aye.
And Dana, aye. Motion carries. All right, so I set you up to approve school fees, and now I'm going to ask that we table the school fees. I have listed up there the school fees that we've passed, previous year. You can see the 1920 school fees. They are typically approved right in this January board meeting. In talking with Susan, she believes that she will be requesting a 5-cent lunch increase and also a 5-cent milk increase. But after a lot of discussion over just the last couple days, I'm going to ask you to table those school fees and look to set them in July. And one of the reasons for that is until we have a clear view as to what school will at least initially look like in the fall. I mean, obviously things like, for example, we may want to have a conversation about technology if we're more online and we're requiring our students to have access. We may want to have a conversation around kind of the overall registration fee if our students are more often in a homeschool setting.
we're probably gonna have some conversations, obviously, around the Springfield trip and so on and so forth. I also, one of the things that we're applying for are some different lunch programs that could result in, there is presently a petition to the USDA to provide free lunch for all students over this next school year due to coronavirus. So I think what we kind of talked about is waiting to see kind of what our plan is that we'll be bringing back to the board to approve going into the next fall before we actually approve the different school fees. So, the board does not need to take any action at this point. I will bring it back at our next, our July board meeting. But that's kind of where we're at with that.
If we could maybe add also at the next board meeting, because it might be related to fees in terms of, you mentioned technology and how it might impact that. I know obviously with Chromebooks and doing things in the virtual world, because I've had some parents in the community ask me not as much about Chromebooks, but about internet capabilities and whether or not if a family might have 3 or 4 students in school, like maybe 2 here at Salem and 2 at Central, and with the whole issue of the broadband and what the capabilities are. So maybe if we can talk about that, because that might impact obviously how much broadband width is needed if there are 4 Chromebooks or 2 here, 2 at Central or whatever. So maybe we can talk about that.
Yeah, and I think that is one of the things, I know that we're going to talk a little bit later this evening about the surveys, and one of the things that some families were very disappointed in was the fact that there wasn't a lot of one-on-one where like typical in a classroom, say from 8 to 8:45, you would have math. So why is it that we can't have our teachers streaming from 8 to 8:45 teaching math? Well, the difficulty in doing that is that works great if you have one child and you're not working, so you can sit there and make sure that your child is participating with that. If you have multiple children, that becomes difficult from a supervision perspective, from bandwidth, as you mentioned, that perspective, for parents who have to send their child to daycare during the day and come home at night, and now what do they do? How do they support their kids through that? So that is going to be that both device access, which is in many ways almost easier to accomplish, but then internet access for students is going to be a huge conversation as we do our planning for next year, and probably one of the most difficult aspects for parents to address.
Is it, and maybe this is more of like a Dan and Shane question, but can the teachers tape themselves and then put it on YouTube? Like, is that?
Yeah, so yes. So one of the things we talked about for the summer school, we're going to be talking about if we run summer school, would be that we would have, for example, it works a little easier, for example, at the 8th grade level, let's say, and you're teaching social studies. So you could teach a couple of your classes in video 1, and then have that video available later for families at night to be able to watch. But still, again, if you did that, for example, in an elementary setting, and if you think about trying to record, let's say, 4 hours, okay, so now the parent comes home, they've got 3 children, multiply that times 4 hours each. And there's no question there are a lot of difficulties in doing it. And in school districts, as you hear about some of these virtual school districts that have been doing it for many years, that is a very different scenario, because that's what they do. They have smaller numbers of students. They're set up for that. The families choose that as an option. So it's a little different setting from that perspective. I suspect that if we're back in an online setting next year, which we'll be talking about a little bit later, we will have gotten better at doing it. We'll have some more options kind of developed for students, but there's still definitely drawbacks with the online instruction. So, all right. So we'll go on to the next topic, and this one is school lunch arrears. And I don't know that the board necessarily needs to do something. It is connected to the school lunch fees, so that's kind of why I'm bringing it up right now. Just a reminder that last year the board approved hiring Central Collections Corporation and submitted, the district then submitted 60 payer accounts totaling $25,000. Now, the other important piece to this was a decision was made, it was kind of around that time, there were a lot of conversations around lunch shaming, if you will. And so a decision was made by the district not to turn students away. So what that means is, regardless of whether a student has money in their account or not, that student will get a lunch. Where these fees then come in, or these debts come in, are not for students who qualify for free reduced lunch, because remember, if a student could be reduced, but those are pretty small amounts. A student who qualifies for free lunch would go through, there would not be a charge. A student who receives reduced lunch, for example, right now is like 40 cents, I believe. Most of these payers are people who are not eligible, who have chosen not to apply for free reduced lunch. So going down again, at that time, the total was $25,000. There were, out of that, 22 payers that paid their accounts in full, and that was a total of $5,473 out of that. 3 have filed bankruptcy, 4 more delinquent payers were added to this list, and 9 payers continue to charge without paying their accounts. So these would be people who were on that, were submitted to collections, and still continue to receive lunch. There are 39 payers that remain right now for a total of $22,352.45.
What's the math? Who can do the math on that really quick?
What?
Dividing 39 into 22,000.
As far as the average,
Yeah. Who has the fastest
what do you
fingers?
think?
Connie wants to-
4,000.
$573 would be the average. Per year. So then, and the reason we're kind of bringing it up to you is that the board had determined that no lunch would be withheld, nor would an alternative lunch provided. So what that means is that in some districts, a student would still be fed, but they would be given, like, for example, a peanut butter sandwich and an apple or something along those lines. At this point, let's see if I'm spelling here, canceling, well, no, I guess I'm spelling right. Is there a grammar police around here? So canceling the debt would actually result in greater losses, because I had a conversation about, I mean, is there a point where, so, you know, as we're looking at coronavirus and that kind of thing, what would happen under that scenario? And under that scenario, because it's been turned over to collections, then it's considered a debt paid if we cancel it, and so then we have to pay the additional fee for collections. So instead of being the $25,000, it would be the $33,000. So obviously that's not a good option. They are suggesting, from a policy perspective, that we as a district write off the debt after about 6 months to a year, because otherwise you're constantly carrying those on your balance sheet. This would clean up the district books, but the debt would still be owed and remain in collections. So this isn't necessarily something that has to be done. That's why you don't see a recommendation from me here. But I did want you to be aware of the school lunch arrears in case you wanted to consider taking some sort of action related to that. It wouldn't necessarily have to be at this point too, we could do it further down the road.
Yeah, I personally believe with everything that's going on in the unemployment rate and everything, dabbling in anything where it's with a collection of debt or anything with debt right now, considering we don't know the fullest extent of everything that's, I think it's a great information piece. However, I don't feel comfortable making any sort of motion on anything at this point, given the situation that we're all in right now, so.
So again, I just felt like as we were talking about school lunch fees, because part of school lunch fees, as we determine those the next time around, has to do with the requirement that the district, in terms of how much money was made or lost in terms of setting lunch prices.
Sure.
Okay. So then, this is one of those other great items that I thought I would have some information for you and we would be approving this evening. We had 31 applicants for our 6th through 8th dean of students. We interviewed 7 candidates, then down to 2 finalists. The position was actually offered to a candidate. I'm not going to say it's a for sure no, but there are definitely some complications. So which we found out tonight at like 4 o'clock. Right?
Yeah.
4 or 5 o'clock tonight.
Absolutely.
So I was really hoping I could have this.
Call
on
from
slide
the
already.
person?
Yeah.
Call from the person.
Yeah. So this one, again, there's no action to take. I'm hopeful that we'll be bringing it back at a later date, but we may have to go back into the pool and take a look at it.
Okay.
So. The next item on the agenda is a little better look by Ed. We had 21 applicants for this position. Drew Cox is being considered for contract approval. I believe he actually grew up in Bristol, is that correct? The physical education teacher presently, for FIAD K-12 at River Trail School in Gurney, from 2018 to the present. Before that, he was both physical education and adaptive PE. That was in India. Correct, yeah. And then, so he's got a bachelor's in education at UW Whitewater, an MS in public administration in American College. However, he will not be getting that until September 6th. So that does lead to a little bit of an interesting contract that we had to come to in there. He has licensure in physical education and adaptive education and health. The other kind of unique thing is he coaches at West Social Central presently.
He's a volleyball coach, yeah.
So definitely kind of familiar with the area. Our recommendation is to consider a contract for Drew Cox as a PE teacher at not less than $52,600 annual salary for the 2021 school year as presented. Let me be clear as to what that contract says, because it is kind of unique. One of the things that you're probably aware of living in this part of the state is that Illinois does pay their teachers fairly significantly higher than Wisconsin does. So in the process of working through and trying to come to a salary where he was at least not taking a pay cut from where he came, it's always really important to me to try and stay on that salary scale. Typically, we would not give approval for a master's degree if the master's degree was not achieved before the first day of school. So if you think of that, for us, our first day of school is September 1st. It looks as though everything is on board for him to get his master's degree on September 6th. So in order to make that transition, the contract will be what his salary would be as a teacher based on his years of experience, plus a hiring incentive to bring him where he would be with a master's for 1 year only. Let's say, for example, he does not get his master's degree when he gets here, then the following year it would drop down to where he would be on the teacher's salary. So I believe that is one of those things under Act 10. You do have an ability to do some individual negotiation, especially when you're bringing someone to the district. However, in this case, it is an accurate representation of where he will be as he's teaching on our salary scale.
So the recommendation would be as written here with no mention specifically about the.
Correct, his individual contract has that clear language.
Okay.
And we can't do something September 7th. We have to wait the whole contract year if something happens.
So if, in his case, he would not have accepted the contract. So that was how we managed to, otherwise he would have taken a significant pay cut. Now, he knows the following year, if for some reason, and there's no reason to believe that he will not get his master's degree. But
Right, that's back.
through some strange circumstances, if that were to be the case, then that's what would occur.
Maybe don't say strange circumstances. Just what is.
Yes, especially this year.
Any truth.
Sorry, I apologize. That's very
So,
inconsiderate. I'm recommending that you consider a contract for Drew Cox as a PE teacher at not less than $52,600 annual salary for the 2021 school year as presented.
I move to approve the contract for Drew Cox as a PE teacher at not less than $52,600 annual salary for the 2020-2021 school year as presented.
Second.
All those in favor, Jack? Nate?
Aye.
Steve?
Aye.
And Dana, aye, motion carries.
Dana?
Yes.
I have to wait for a second. Any votes coming across, please just list me as, an abstention.
Okay, this one.
Abstain.
I'll be right back.
Got it, okay, thanks.
Okay, so just so we're clear then, if there were to be, so you have 3 board members present at this point, you would need to have all 3 vote in the
Yes.
affirmative in order to pass.
Correct.
So the next item I have on the agenda is the CISA 2 annual contract for membership services. This is an annual contract that we pass every year. This is for both, you can see our membership in CISA 2. Membership in CISA is not something that a district can choose to be. You can't say to yourself, well, we'd rather be with CISA 3 or we'd rather be with CISA 5. You are where your region is. And your membership then is based on the size of your school and the number of your students. So the larger the district, the more you pay to be a member of CISA 2. But from that then, so you can see your annual membership fee, which is a fairly small amount. Then the other programs that we participate in with CISA 3 would be the Title III Consortium. But CISA 2.
She says CISA 3.
She said Title III.
So CISA 2, Title III Consortium. Okay, Title III is our ESL dollars that we get. English is second language now. We get a fairly small amount. Our actual membership fee in CISA 3, they manage the financial end of that, but they pull it from the overall total. So that's why you don't see a separate amount there. Then we contract with them for educational audiology. The reason the star is there is that it is IP based, so this can change. So let's say, for example, right now we have a student that we're contracting with for that, but then that student no longer moves out of our district, then that amount can change. Or if a student were to move into our district that we need those services, that amount can change also.
Don't we share that amount with parents, like some of those services?
Yes,
Okay,
I forget which roles, but yes.
So we do have shared contracts, but not based on these 2 services.
okay.
You're thinking.
Or it's not an audiology, and I know that. Yeah, I just.
You may be thinking of deaf and hard of hearing, which is a separate teacher.
Okay, we're splitting that out.
That one you should.
And then physical therapy, also again, IP based for a total of $32,850, again, a projection. So the recommendation would be consider for approval, CISA 2 preliminary contract for services for the 2021 school year as presented.
I motion to approve season 2 preliminary contract for services for the 2020-2021 school year as presented.
Second.
All those in favor? Jack, are you there?
Yep.
Nick,
Aye.
Steve,
Aye.
and Dana, oh, we don't have to do that, Jack. Okay, motion carries. Got it.
So I have a listing, usually around this time of the year, you cite your board meetings for the remainder of the year. You can see the listing that I have, and where you see yellow would be some question marks that you may want to think about. So we traditionally meet on the fourth Tuesday of the month. Any of those that are in white at least appear to me to be days that don't have any conflicts. But as you think about this last year, just as with this last year, the November 24th meeting would be the Tuesday of Thanksgiving week. Is that a problem or not? That's, and I think you can always change these down the road too. You can preliminarily set them and then make a decision to change them down the road. The December one would be Tuesday, December 22nd, again, the week of Christmas. And then the only other one that is probably a little bit kind of odd would be the Tuesday, March 23rd one, which would be during the week of spring break. Let's hope we have spring break this next year.
What if we just move all of those three one Tuesday up? Like, three.
So.
So Tuesday, November 17th, Tuesday, December 15th, right?
I
I
think you'll
mean,
make
is the Tuesday of Thanksgiving really a difficult thing? No.
it,
Well, it might be for someone who travels.
it can be,
It can be.
depending on what your recreation are. But it's also, usually Wednesdays off, so,
Yeah,
Right.
like, so I come
So
tomorrow.
if you
right,
went,
and I think we did that last year.
we did. So if you went the Tuesday before, it would be the 17th. November.
The what?
The 17th of November would be the Tuesday before.
And then if you move November's up and December's up, then
Then December's would go to the 15th.
Yeah.
and then if that's set, then maybe that can help determine when calendars are.
And then the other question would be, would there be an issue with spring break, the March 23rd?
Move that up.
You move that up to the 16th.
The 16th.
Would be the week before.
Right, and it can always be, yes.
Right, so recommendation would be to consider the approval of the 2021 annual regular school board meeting schedule as amended. So in other words, change from that prior Tuesday and then present.
I move to approve the 2020-2021 annual regular school board meeting schedule as amended.
So,
Second.
all those in favor, Jack,
Aye.
Nick,
Aye.
Steve,
Aye.
and Dana, I motion carries.
So we have some facility use requests. Some of these came up earlier this year. Initially, a decision was made to hold off for a while on some of these, and these have all come back. So I've got 3 different kind of groups that I'd like the board to take a look at. The first group, which we've had a pretty significant relationship with and has a pretty significant impact on our overall building, would be Kids Club. So they have been asking multiple times to return. At this point, they're asking to return beginning July 1st. They have several parents, so right now they are in Trigger Wilmot, they are in Wheatland, their other places are open. but the parents are specifically requesting Salem because many of them are Salem families. And so they've been, according to Kids Club, asked if there was any possible way that Salem would be reopening. And I would suggest you handle this with two different motions and decisions. One would be for their summer care programs. And then the next one would potentially be for their school year programs. I think you could delay the one for a little while. I mean, there's nothing that requires you to delay that one, but
We could always, well, we'd have a contract right now, or could we did not, based upon if we had another COVID situation, we could just change it now too. So we could approve or disapprove.
And we could approve summer and do nothing.
wait, I mean, one of the options could be to approve a summer program beginning July 1, and then say that we don't take out the school year when we take up our school year was. So remember, I said we'd be coming back on that July 28th to talk about what our programming may look like going into the year forward. That may be the time at that point.
I don't have a problem with it personally. The only thing that I would like to see from them is some sort of containment plan and a sanitation guide. I want to see those things that everyone has to do. I don't think obviously it can be the way it used to be, right? So, and there would be certainly portions of the building that would be certainly quarantined off from that. Then I would seem it to be fair at that point.
So they just use the cafeteria and the bathrooms and the outside?
That's my understanding for the most part.
And-
I guess what I would say, if you,
Sometimes the gym is used,
Is
South
it
gym.
right there?
the south gym.
So it's all,
and there are some state requirements for them as well that are different than they did in the past in terms of what they have to do with entry of kids and some of the cleaning. I guess one of the stipulations I would say is that if there are additional costs incurred by the district related to any of the sanitation and cleaning that's required, then that would be reimbursed over and above. And then I would also say that, potentially what you could do is approve it based on a submitted written plan approved by the district administrator. And then you could take a look at, that way you wouldn't have to meet in your next board meeting, it would be tentatively approved for me then to approve what their written plan would be.
I like that personally. I don't know how you guys feel. Yeah, I motion to approve the Kids Club request beginning July 1st of 2020 for summer care programs barring a written program submitted to the district administrator.
Second.
all those in favor?
Aye.
Steve?
Aye.
And Dana, aye, motion carries.
And then I would let them know that we'll hold off until we submit our plan, which would be July 28th for the school year, to have a conversation about it.
Now, I would assume that they will, that they will do their due diligence in terms of any of those children who might become positive with COVID.
Right, I think, obviously there would need to be clear lines of communication.
Sure.
So one of the things that I think will add to the conversation is that as we look at next year, one of the things that's been pretty clear from DPI is trying to keep kids, different groups from intermingling.
Mm-hmm.
So if you think about a scenario where we put all kinds of effort into keeping our kids in homeroom and separating our kids on buses and making sure that they're not coming into contact, then the next day they're in daycare where they're all in that contact. I think those are gonna be some kind of heavy conversations we're gonna have to have around, if we go to all this effort and difficulty for our families in trying to set up an environment that's safe for our students, it doesn't have the same effect if as soon as they leave us, then they go to a daycare and they don't have those things in place. that will be something that we'll have to kind of.
Right,
work out.
and also, I think as you talk with them, just to let them know that, with regards to the 2020-2021 school year, that's something we were looking at a bit later.
Yep.
Right?
So then the next item on the agenda are some requests to use our outdoor facilities. Beginning again July 1, so the group that is the most at this point concerned about wanting to do that is Wisconsin Lightning, which is a youth softball program. They have put some pretty significant resources in our field out there. They would like to be able to open up again July 1 for activities. However, what I'm asking you is as it relates to outdoor facilities, that it would just be that group. So if you open up our outside facilities to groups that would traditionally use our facilities based on the facilities system that we have in place. So they still have to go through the application process.
Yeah, I think the same thing. I'm totally for this, especially since it's back there and they have put a lot of capital into improving that field and everything out there for sure. I just want them to understand too that, again, sanitation, the whole 9 yards, that's on them, and any extra cost to the district, that's on them for sanitation.
I agree with Nick.
So then this one would be one where we would need for a motion to open our outside facilities to outside groups, pending our traditional kind of application process that we have for those types of things.
I motion to approve outside groups like the Wisconsin Lightning softball team for usage of our facilities while still maintaining the normal application process moving forward.
So,
Second.
all those in favor, Jack,
Aye.
Nick,
Aye.
Steve,
Aye.
and Dana, aye, motion carries.
This one a little more complicated. This would be groups that want to use our indoor facilities, both during the summer potentially, but also going into the school year. So these would be groups like basketball, Girl Scouts, Boy Scouts, some of those different, so they're not actually school-sponsored groups. They have traditionally, though, in the past, used our facilities for different activities. They've gone through that process. The question would be, are we ready to open up to those types of groups? I think I would be very careful during the 2021 school year.
Right.
Because initially, there will definitely be, even if we're, like, let's say the best scenario would be that we have the majority of our students back. Most of the recommendations talk about limiting other groups from using the facilities. I'd also be a little concerned about our ability to provide the level of cleaning for our own students, then on top of that, to provide that for other groups. So this one, again, I guess I would be more tentative about making that decision, especially as it relates to during the school year.
What about for the summer?
But
I said, what about for the summer? What is your opinion and the other administrators?
I mean, mine still would be, I personally would still wouldn't open it up. I mean,
You would or would
I
not?
would not, no. I just think it kind of, all this, and then you've got to answer questions, why you open up July through August, but now you're closing September through the school year. I think that's a difficult question to answer.
I would really have a question about any group that uses the inside of the school for any kind of food, like pancake and porky breakfast. I mean, as hard as they try to keep those little guys sanitary, it's just very difficult to do.
And then, also keep in mind that we will have our staff in the building doing whatever they're gonna be doing. And, all it takes is, one or two of these
Careful.
from these groups, who can then spread it to our own staff.
So I think, what I'm hearing a little bit is, and I think I would are some concerns with bringing students in the, or bringing these different groups in the building. I think one of the things that you could do would be to say, let's kind of see how it goes with the kids club in the building. We're going to be looking at some potential options. You know, if we look at something potentially for summer school a little later, we're going to talk about that a little bit. But kind of see how some of those things go before we go to full having other groups from the outside view.
Yeah, I would agree with you. The only challenge I would put towards that is, though this obviously being a public facility funded by taxpayers, you know, to the best of our ability, we should try everything we can to open it up as much as safety allows, right? So I don't disagree with right now, it seems difficult to do. However, I'm okay with a really in detail plan about how they would make it easy for us to say yes to, right? So for us looking at this, just like right now, I'm like, based on this information, there's no way I could say yes, right? But if there's a detailed plan that was submitted to the board to talk about how they would ensure us that we would not be overburdened by this, I would certainly consider that, look at that, and make a decision based upon that plan, for sure.
Yeah, and I think, you know, with the concern, it goes back to that concern around students intermingling. Well, those groups can be here, they can be somewhere else.
Sure.
And intermingling is still going to take place.
Yeah.
So what I'm hearing is to go back to those groups and say, at this point, given the information we have and given the usage of our building right now, we have concerns. If you wanted to submit a detailed plan as to how you would propose to address some of the concerns related to the spread of coronavirus, we'd be willing to take a look at that plan.
Yeah, I mean, just like the lighting, they submitted pretty significant write-up that was pretty detailed. I mean, it was hard not to look at that without some sort of consideration. So I'd be open to that for sure, but yeah, I agree.
Then on to the reading program approval. Just to remind the board, this has been a pretty long process of going through to come to some sort of a decision related to the PK5 reading curriculum. I'm going to turn it over to Principal Sandberg to share all the hard work that's been done and all the reasons to make a decision.
Thank you. Yeah, so I'm really excited to kind of bring this forward. The last couple of years, obviously, as a district, we've been working on the reading curriculum. And so one of the things we want to do as an administration team, we want to make sure that they had a lot of say in this process. We want them to feel like they were involved in their opinion maker. So really this started kind of in September, and then we kind of brought this forward to the rest of the staff in December. And one of the first steps we kind of let them know is we just wanted a grade level team survey. It was pretty basic, and we had 5 basic questions. The first was, what are you looking for in a reading curriculum? What kind of learning experiences do you want your students to have? What specific skills in the Common Core you'd like to see emphasized in the new reading curriculum? What are the strengths and weaknesses you're seeing students bring to grade level in the fall? And then finally, are you familiar with any reading curriculums that you'd like the literacy team to explore? And so how we kind of then created this literacy team is on that first day in December, we kind of talked about this. Each grade level team amongst themselves they got to pick a representative at that grade level for each team. Along with the rest of the administration team, they're on the literacy team as well. And then we also had a special education teacher in primary and then intermediate. So that kind of covered all of our different phases as far as who we thought would be involved. But ended up being about 12 different members that were actually part of that team. And then we kind of started meeting pretty much every Tuesday from here until basically the end of the year. We had a little break in there, which we'll talk about with COVID. Good slide. So then kind of how we talked as a literacy team, like how did we choose a curriculum? And kind of the idea that was kind of brought forward between the administrative staff and myself was effective programs are driven by research and not ideology. I think sometimes too often, and even when I was a teacher, I'd like to teach a reading lesson because I liked it. It was feel good, it made me feel good as a teacher. And I like to teach the lesson, but what really was best for students. So the very first thing we wanted to look at was something that was research-based. And the idea behind that was practices, activities and strategies that are designed to improve student achievement. That was our number one thing. The second thing was our Falcon 4. I'll kind of tell you what those Falcon 4 things were in a little bit, but basically we took all those grade level surveys that we did, we organized all those thoughts, and we came up with the 4 biggest things that were unique to our district that our teacher wanted in the literacy program. And then finally, we just, throughout the entire process, we gave staff feedback, and that was through site visits, surveys, and then literacy. And so kind of as we met early, like in January and things like that, we kind of just talked about what research really did say about literacy, because we think that was the most important thing that we were looking at. So really at the beginning, there's a lot of different things, but we found about 8 different things we kind of sent back to staff. But really, students need time to become better readers. They need time, they need ample time for independent reading. They need many lessons that are taught at that grade level. What happens is if you do many lessons, that's, for example, let's say a student's behind, maybe a grade level or 2, and that mini lesson is tailored to them, that's really just going to increase the gap. So the reality is you need that mini lesson at that grade level being taught. They also need book choice. So students need opportunities to read high interest, accessible books at their choosing. And accessible is a key word there. I think sometimes too, people don't always understand what that means. It means 90% accuracy that they can read that independently. So sometimes even as a teacher, even myself, you say, oh, you work really hard, I'm gonna give you a little challenging book. If they can't read it at 90% accuracy, that's not doing anything for them for their reading. Read alouds, basically they just need time to read aloud and provide students with additional opportunities to practice, learn skills, not foster a love of reading. They need time, they need discussions, readers need opportunities to talk and respond to texts. And students need direct and explicit lessons that allow them to learn about and effectively use silent letters and words. Students need feedback in the form of formative and summative assessments, and that needs to be direct and explicit. And then kind of the last idea was teachers matter. And we found this when it comes to student performance and reading, a teacher is estimated to have 2 or 3 times the impact of any other school factor. Teachers need to be given time for collaboration and professional development to develop their abilities. And so we've kind of talked about all these different parts, but really you probably heard the term balanced literacy, but really all of these different parts of word study, reading, assessment, listening, speaking, and writing, all under kind of fall under the umbrella of balanced literacy. So when we were looking through different reading curriculums, we were trying to find a curriculum that accompanied all those different components. And so like I was kind of talking about with our staff survey, what we kind of did, we organized this as a literacy team. And we kind of found out 4 main things we wanted. The unique thing and kind of nice thing is we heard these things over and over again, so it really wasn't that difficult to find our 4. A lot of the answers were similar at all grade levels. So first of all, staff, and these weren't in any particular order, but staff wanted a curriculum that would foster the love of reading in students. Staff wanted a curriculum that had explicit phonics and vocabulary instruction. That was probably the number 1 thing that was talked about, especially in that K2, K3 area. Staff wanted a curriculum that provided materials and lessons for workshop activities, and then they wanted a curriculum that differentiated instruction to meet the needs of all learners in their school. And so I kind of printed this out for you so you can see this a little bit better, but that was what I kind of just shared with you a little bit earlier was basically what we did through early mid-July. This is kind of the timeline then we took the rest of this, basically second half of the year. So then in late January and early February, after we kind of created our Falcon 4 and went through these surveys, we began looking at individual curriculums. In late January and early February, we started looking at Lucy Calkins and we did Sunday phonics. And then kind of going into February, we began piloting Sundays in 2 classrooms. It was a relatively cheap pilot, so we were able to do that. That's not really possible with a reading curriculum because reading curriculums get very expensive. If you try to pilot something at all different grade levels, you're talking about something where it costs you $50,000 or $60,000 to do that. And that becomes more of an implementation, not necessarily a pilot. Districts that are like a Kenosha side where they're spending $10 million on a budget are able to do that for you. Fortunately, just can't because of our side. We began looking at phonics Pinhel, and then also the literacy team completed a reading curriculum survey again, just to kind of see where their pulse was, where they felt like we were at in this process, and kind of where we were going to go from there. And then finally, we presented Sundays to the entire staff during in-service to get feedback. Sundays is the specific phonics instruction all the students were wanting to get. So that's what's gonna be taking place at Worth Their Way next year, where this is more explicit. Really what it is, it's 20 minutes of basically drill and kill every single day of explicit phonics instruction, which they said particularly those grades K through 2, they were missing that in their instruction previously in school. And then early in mid-March, we kind of began looking at reviewing our core. That's why American Reading Company is just another curriculum. We did a site visit at our core at Westfield School and went to Harvard, which gave us kind of more information. We then kind of met after that visit, kind of got more feedback from the rest of the literacy team, what they liked, what they had more questions on. And then you can kind of see the break between mid-March and obviously mid-April. That's kind of when COVID hit. We also in mid-March initially had a FP or Phonics and Pinnell site visit scheduled. It literally was scheduled the week where everything kind of turned, so we weren't able to do that site visit. And so when we kind of met back in mid-April, obviously staff, there was a lot of questions and a lot of apprehension on how we could continue to go forward with the literacy curriculum with not knowing what the school could necessarily look like in the fall. So one of the things we kind of just talked about, so we just did an anonymous survey, so I got feedback on that. Like I said, there was a lot of concerns, and we kind of just worked through that as a team. Basically, the whole idea is, yes, we don't know what it's going to look like exactly in the fall. No one does. But ultimately, we're all here to do the best things for students. And getting a curriculum in place is what's best for students, because as of right now, when we've got a curriculum that's 15 years old, teachers are doing all different things. Again, it's not their fault. They're working extremely hard. But when you don't have something in place, obviously, you're going to just get more and more gaps. So they kind of all agree that since even if it does go virtual, they'd rather be all working towards something as opposed to kind of working individually. So they kind of then decided we continue to move forward. So then kind of in late April, kind of moving forward, we had a virtual meeting with the representative from our core. That was the sales rep that we kind of met with, and that was supposed to be in mid-March, it just got pushed back. We created a document with positives and negatives about each curriculum, and questions we still had. And kind of at that point too, it kind of started emerging that American Reading Company was kind of the favorite. But we still took all those different positives and negatives and questions. And one of the things teachers still wanted is we really wanted to do a site visit for Phonics and Pinnell, that other curriculum. We kind of narrowed down to those two. We weren't able to do that, but I did have a connection to a principal in K-Tech, at K-Tech, a school in Kenosha, which they implemented it. And so we basically did a Zoom meeting with the administration, a couple of reading specialists and teachers that use Phonics and Pinnell. And it gave the opportunity to the literacy team to ask any questions that they had and kind of get an idea if Phonics and Pinnell was right for our school. And then in early May, we continue to begin having discussions on how we implement either our core or FPC in 2020 or the 2021 school year. And like I said, at that point, it seemed like based on all the responses, American Reading Company was the clear favorite. However, then in mid-May, we did do another survey. Basically, it was one question I asked. It was which curriculum would you feel comfortable with moving to the moving to the fall school year. There were 3 responses. It was American Reading Company, it was Phonics and Pinnell, and there was I'm not comfortable making a decision at this time. So out of the 12 responses, 11 people put American Reading Company, 0 put Phonics and Pinnell, and 1 person said they weren't comfortable. So we pretty much had a unanimous decision on moving forward with our core. And then kind of moving towards this summer, we're looking to do some professional development for beginning with all staff. I've kind of talked a little bit now too, a little bit more about like our core and kind of why we kind of actually chose that one and what's kind of unique with that compared to other ones. So really what it does is a coherent instructional system. And so basically it combines grade level rigor and offers differentiated support in different reading accelerated books and things like that to help accelerate achievement. And it also produces a strong reading culture. They've got a 100 book challenge each year where kids are going to go to read 100 books by the end of the year. And then this is kind of, we talked about the balanced literacy model or the umbrella. So this is kind of how it hits on that earlier slide, how it kind of hits all these different things. This is kind of what a typical lesson would look like throughout the day. It kind of goes, and some of these things are happening simultaneously throughout the lesson, but you have grade level daily lessons, and then you have an interactive read aloud by the teacher or some sort of modeling. You have a shared reading or closed reading of a complex text. And then you have students reading. We talked about how important independent reading is at their level for about 35 minutes. And while independent reading is happening, these other things are happening at the same time. So teachers are assessing and accountability meeting with other students, or they're working in small groups to meet with other skills. So basically, a teacher could be at a back desk, working with 5 or 6 kids. The rest of the kids are independent reading. Once they're done with that group for 10 minutes, they'll pull another group back and work with them. So those kids are still independent reading. And then kind of finally, there's a whole group writing lesson, and then there's a writer's workshop included with that. Typically, that whole block, that reading hour is about 90 minutes. It's a 90-minute reading lesson between reading and writing. And then here's this is kind of just an example of a year-long scope and sequence and kind of how it looks. So there's 4 units total at each grade level. Each unit is divided up basically into quarters. Typically, the first year they say it will take a little bit longer. But unit 1, which every grade level K-5 would start with, is basically learning how to do a literacy workshop. Unit 2, and again, each unit's a quarter. Unit 2 is basically an informational text unit. One of the nice things too about our core is that it combines science and social studies embedded into the reading standards a little bit. So unit 2 is focused more on informational text and science. Unit 3 is a genre study where, depending on what grade level, it could be a little bit different. I think like 5th grade, for example, is mystery. And then unit 4 then is a social studies unit. Again, that's kind of based at their like each unit again is a quarter. And at the end of the quarter, there's some sort of summative assessment that's happening, which is basically project-based. And then throughout these units, you can go to the next thing. One of the things they do at each unit, which is really nice, which we kind of thought as a team that set ARC apart with all others, is the formative assessments they're doing throughout the entire process. So they use something for a benchmark system called the ERLA, and basically it helps you know where each student is, where the student should be, and the steps in between. So a lot of people talk about the achievement gap. All an achievement gap is basically it's where the student's independent reading level is and their grade level and the gap between those two. And then how you're going to scaffold them or how you're going to then close that gap. So how it basically works with the ERLA is basically you identify, they meet an individual at the beginning of the year, they identify the ERLA reading level, students take a test with the teacher, they read a passage, they answer comprehension questions, and then based off that ERLA, the teacher then uses the ERLA to diagnose specific instructional needs that student might have. And then they use that ERLA based on where they're at. They model specific lessons and specific skills based on where that student is at. And that's where the step 4 comes in, where they're working in those small groups where they would actually get that specific lesson based on their needs and where they would need to be. And one of the nice things too with this is it's very helpful and informative to parents and teachers as well. I'm sure as parents, some of you have heard of like accelerated reader and their grade levels of the Lexile, they're at like a 450. Quite honestly, parents for the most part don't really know what that means. It's not an default, it's just how it's done. One of the nice things about this benchmark system, it gives you specific areas of what they're actually working on. It gives you an understanding. So as a parent, you know exactly what they're doing. So for example, just on this one, you can see it starts at pre-K on the bottom and goes then all the way to 8th grade. I know we're getting K-5. But for example, the 2G where it kind of shows, they're focusing on different things. So if your student, let's say, is in 1st grade at a level 3, they're working on initial blends and diagrams. And basically, in each of those things, specific skills they would actually need to know to go on to that next level. And that's very easy to communicate as a teacher to a parent and get them to understand specifically what they're working on, where they need to go with that. And the neat thing is when we actually previewed this at a different, Winthrop Howard or Westfield school, there's something called power goals. And so that one thing, for example, that child that was at a 2G level, there's that one goal they're working on to make them go from like a green to like a blue. And I could go up to any student, any of those students would know what their power goal was and what their main focus was on. And basically that's the one thing the teacher was working on at that time to help them continue to move on and continue to kind of grow at that level. And so, and here's kind of an example of what I talked about earlier, like entry and exit requirements and how specific it really actually is. And again, this is something teachers can share with parents, and again, it makes it a lot more informative. So parents are like, what does my child need to know that goes from a green to a blue? It says the exit requirement. So for example, on one of them, it says it must be in place before earning the next designation. So for example, they have to do so many phonics skills. For example, it says blending, segment, onset, and rhyme for single syllable spoken words. There's some parts in word recognition, recognize and read grade appropriate irregular spelled words, and a comprehension checklist where they need to be able to read with sufficient accuracy and fluency to support comprehension. Again, we feel like this is a lot more informative than as opposed to when you go to a conference and they say, well, your accelerated fingers at a 4.2, or your Lexile at a 453. Basically, all the teacher can really tell you is, well, they're at grade level, it's just below grade level. So it gives you guys and parents more of an idea of what specifically they're working on.
I was going to take over a little bit at this point. So I just want to be clear that, so when you look, there's a little bit of sticker shock that comes along with these, but it's really important to realize that this goes across a PK5 grade level, and for, you know, several years into the future. So this is not, this is the fee for this year. When looking at the different programs that were researched, you can see that they're all pretty pricey. So there isn't like, you know, one program is like super cheap and then these other programs are, that there's this huge difference financially. But there definitely were some significant factors with our core that bring more value to the program. So if you take a look at the Lucy Calkins, it doesn't include an intervention component, it doesn't include a professional development piece, and there is no virtual or online component, which is somewhat concerning as we look at the potential for next year to have continued online instruction. Pontus Canal, again, does not include the writing component, which is one of the things our teachers ask for, and also no virtual or online component to that. The art core does include all of the professional development. It does include that writing component. It does include the intervention components. And there is a virtual online component available for our staff if we were to end up in that virtual world next year. So after a pretty significant amount of time researching, talking about, surveying staff, sharing with staff, we really believe that this is a staff decision, not an administrative decision to go forward with this. We believe that our staff has indicated to us that they are tentative. This is a big step, but also supportive and ready to move forward. We know that there's some flexibility around this, that if we're not completely ready to start September 1, this is a program that we could delay starting a little bit into the year to make sure everybody is ready to go forward. But we're asking the board to consider approval of the American Reading Company core as the Salem PK5 reading curriculum for implementation during the 2020-21 school year as presented.
Yeah, motion to approve. I motion the approval of the American Reading Company core as the Salem PK5 reading curriculum for implementation during the 2020-2021 school year as presented.
Second.
All those in favor, Jack?
Aye.
Nick?
Aye.
Steve?
Aye.
Dan? Aye. Motion carries. Thank you, Ryan.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ryan.
Thank you.
Good job.
Just some updates on the facility study. As you know, that got a little bit delayed with coronavirus, but one of the significant components was to complete an existing facilities assessment. That is now done. The engineers have put that all together. The only piece that's remaining is to get what they do is they work with a contractor that then will put prices to each of these things. So they're going to be working, I believe, with Kramer Brothers now in the next week or so to get actual prices affixed to the different items that they've identified the district would need to do or have done in the next 5 years especially. The way that that will be set up will be broken down into those things that are health and safety issues, those things that are past their useful life, so we need to immediately start thinking, in other words, you're kind of living on, each day at a time. Those things that may be out, but that are significant costs that you just may not. But then the next aspect of this, and this is what we're in the middle of doing right now, is the educational space analysis. So in other words, really taking a look at the space that we have available, looking at what we know kind of now about 21st century learning environments in each building, determining the deficiencies in future space requirements, and to provide both a student capacity analysis compared to some of the district population. But even over and above that, one of the things that I specifically asked for is, what would we do if we grew? Not we're for sure gonna grow, but what if we did? What might that look like? And what might be some of the options and some of the costs attached to that? And the reason I asked them to really look at that is, we may stay very stable, but if you look at much of the manufacturing growth around, we could also grow pretty quickly. There are some districts in the state of Wisconsin that see such significant growth that they're building schools every year. I'm not saying that's going to be us, but you wouldn't want to have a situation where truly in a 5-year span, you grow significantly and you have no thoughts about what that next step might be. So that would be an aspect of that. So they met with our administrative team, kind of went through the building just this last week, and just really only looking at educational spaces. How's this space used? How's this space used? What are some of the deficiencies we as an administrative team see in the building? And then the next component of that for them is to then put out a survey to all of our staff to get a feel for, what do you see as the deficiencies in your workspace? So in other words, those areas that you work in, are there areas, for example, with our indoor facilities that you see, with our common spaces that you see, with our outdoor facilities? So this is kind of that stage of gathering staff input. And then from there, it all gets put together into that facility study that will then be presented back out to the board and to staff. So just kind of an update on that in terms of where we're at. You can see the survey is due by July 3rd. I think we were hoping to have information by the end of the year until the coronavirus kind of hit. I do believe we'll have pretty good information by the end of July. And then I don't want to spend a huge amount of time on this, but I want to make sure people know we're at least thinking about it, and we have a process in place that we're thinking about how we go forward. I did send out a survey to all families in the district. I will tell you, I went and I looked, and a half hour after that went out, I had 90 responses. I could hardly believe it. This morning, when I looked, I had 408 responses. So if you think about that, I mean, we have 1,000 students, but that doesn't mean we have 1,000 families. So we're getting pretty good response rates. But I will tell you, as I look through the preliminary responses, I guarantee you that whatever decision we come up with will not please probably even the majority. But we asked topics about their overall comfort level with returning, preferences related to delivery model, for example, online, total in school, kind of a blended model where half the time they're off school, half the time they're in school. Questions about transportation, childcare needs, factors that would make them feel more comfortable, tentative plans, and what, at least at this point, they're thinking their tentative plans might be. One of the questions specifically in there was, will I return my student to school in that school setting? So the survey is open through June 29th. I'm really pleased with the amount of responses we've gotten at this point, but certainly, I mean, there will be good information in there. sometimes that information is gonna be difficult for us to sort through because people will have very different opinions. Most people are aware that DPI put out a guide for making decisions. That was published on June 22nd. That is a heavy read. If you go through and start reading that, and a difficult read because it really lays out a lot of guidelines and thoughts. And that is also something we sent out to families. I sent that out to staff. Certainly that will be something that we'll be looking at as we try and kind of move forward. One of the things that I will be recommending is that we kind of really have about 3 plans in mind, not maybe completely fleshed out, but that we have at least the logistics set up for 3 different plans, being 1, what would we do if we had the majority of our students back and we had to try and socially distance them as much as possible? 2, what would a blended model look like? Most likely for us, probably like a Monday, Tuesday for one group, a Thursday, Friday for another group, Wednesday for cleaning, Saturday for cleaning. But we'll see where parents fall on, in terms of their thoughts on, would a half day be better? Would a 1 week and a 1 week be better? But that kind of a model, and then obviously the last model would be total online, or some combination. I mean, there are some districts that may look to bring back the lower grade levels and the upper grade levels, keep them on online. Those are all things that are being talked about. Just to let you know where I'm getting my information from right now, I work with and get a lot of information from WASDA, which is Wisconsin Association of School District Administrators. I meet with the Central Wilmot kind of group of superintendents at least bi-weekly to talk about reopening. Starting last week, Friday, I love how it's going to be every Friday morning now. Kenosha Health Department will be meeting with all superintendents virtually, starting at 8 o'clock for 2 hours to talk about just Kenosha County. As you can imagine, the Kenosha County Health Department will play a pretty significant role in kind of getting a check off on what our plan is, if we have a plan to open. So that would be another group that I've kind of been meeting with and will be weighing in.
Okay, so schools get to decide what they want to do, but they have to be approved.
Well, so DPI has basically said they're going to give guidelines, and it will be up to the school district to make a decision as to what it looks like. However, again, Kenosha County does have the authority to shut down or to layer on additional requirements. So if you think about, for example, the safer at home, there were counties that bounced out of the safer at home and was struck down. There were other counties that maintained that level. So the county does have some ability to dictate what school districts do. Now, am I saying that that's adversarial? No, I really certainly want to work with Kenosha County, get the input that they can offer for us, because they're the ones who understand more of the community spread, the impact on hospitals and community medical providers. As you look at the DPI guidelines, it really sets up the goals that they have for returning to school. 1, keeping students and staff physically safe. Obviously, one of the major components of this is going to be, on one hand, we know that students maybe don't get it as often, but what happens if our staff does? And how fast would you end up, shutting down a good portion of your staff? And if you wanted to keep your school open, you wouldn't be able to, because you wouldn't have staff to do it. So the focus on that, caring for the social, emotional, and mental health needs of our students and staff, we know that that has been really heavy on both our families and our staff, and working through that. Keeping learning coherent by creating a scope of standards with aligned systems of assessments. I won't drag into this, but really that concept of, as we've been talking about all year, even before coronavirus, making sure our 5th grade teachers are on the same page about what they're teaching and how we're assessing that, what those standards are that they're addressing.
Connie, I
I scanned through the whole 87 pages in the Education Forward document that came from DPI. Have you and the administrative team talked about putting together either a YouTube video or doing I think we talked about it briefly at the meeting the other day, with the Education Policy Committee, about either a YouTube video or a Zoom event that to talk about these things, especially when the survey information comes back?
Right. So kind of I'm gonna jump ahead one screen here because just as part of our process, we did the parent survey. I think that's going to give us some real valuable, at least information to think about. Then right away next week, I'm hopeful to pull my administrative team together for a couple days, kind of in a retreat format, to really start kind of knocking out some of the rudimentary kind of ideas behind a plan. Then setting up kind of a staff reopening committee and survey. So, we surveyed families, but we have not done the same level of surveying the staff, looking at kind of pulling together a group of staff to look at kind of what reopening might look like, doing some planning around those three modes of delivery, both the online, the blended, the on-site with the online option. So there will be families regardless, like let's say we go with, everybody back, there will be families that will say, I'm not comfortable sending my child back. So any of our plans will probably include a total online option for those families. And then having those plans presented to all staff for feedback, and then some listening sessions with community and parents. And I think that's where that concept of a webinar, providing information, but also giving them an option to kind of look at and talk about, share some of the concerns they have with, that's a lot to get done between now and then. But the goal would be then to present a plan from the administrative team to the board at that July 28th board meeting for approval. And so that's kind of the timeline. We really feel like if we don't at least have a pretty tentative plan for families and that by that July 28th, which is pretty consistent with most of the other districts. Some of them have talked about just like that first part of August. But that's kind of our goal going forward, kind of that timeline that we're going to be. So it will be, unlike probably some other summers, a very busy summer this summer. Questions on that? Great, because I don't have answers for any of those questions. Administrator reports. Is this your last one? This is my last one. It's the wipes over there.
I think Ryan here.
Yeah, I think that's
Clean.
So good evening. First of all, I wanted to just talk about graduation just briefly. There were so many people that were involved in making that work. So that was an effort by, so many, not only to look at, how to proceed with the graduation, which we try to do it as traditionally as possible in terms of what we've done in the past. So with the stage decorated and so on, students receiving their diplomas then on the following day in the parking lot. So we traditionally have done a parade of graduates throughout hallways and on the very last day for them, and then that was done with the cars in the parking lot. But again, with so many people assisting to make that work, many parents were very appreciative of that, and students also enjoyed that. I had the privilege of meeting Patty Fitzgerald, and we also arranged for a day. We talked a little bit, and so that was very nice. And so she is ready to go. I know she's got some boxes in her office, and she should be moving in shortly. So that's a nice meeting. And then I'll be meeting one more time with Ryan tomorrow to give them a little bit more information that I have. And I'm right now in the midst of closing down my office, packing things up, everything's off the wall, so, and my last day then is Thursday. So, I'll be coming in, occasionally, just to, finish up some work that we're doing down by the district office to prepare that little mini museum for Salem, for the building and the history behind that, so we'll finish up that, some of the help from the custodian staff. So, but it's been an honor to serve the district, and thank you very much for your support.
Thank you for everything you've done. Thank you.
You can say it, everyone.
I mean,
I'll stand up for you, because I think they're-
Judy, you can also be seen there.
Oh, that's right.
You have to stay there.
Just to give a little bit of update of what we've been working on our end. SEL, you're going to hear a lot of SEL. The great thing is what we were already starting to work on all of this before everything sort of went with the COVID wave. One of the things that we truly want to make sure we stay focused on is not only SEL for our students, but SEL for our staff. And especially during this time, I mean, as everyone's been hearing, the survey, I'm just going to come back about 50-50. You know, half the people are going to want this, half the people are going to want that. But our teachers are also feeling the same way too. You know, some are ready to jump back into the classroom and start getting on the floor and coloring, and others are like, no, I'm not really sure. So we really have been thinking about what can we do to help support teachers and make sure that they also have a voice and that they feel comfortable. So something very unique we did at the end of the school year is we met, I don't want to say necessarily in vertical teams, but we met in very random teams. There were also some entire classes teachers
working in their grade level team, but they really didn't get to see teachers across the grade level. So 3rd grade with 8th grade with the art teacher, being able to meet in very unique groups just to talk about things like what went well during this time, what challenges did you have, how did you grow, and just kind of letting them share their experiences with each other. Like I said, they typically were sharing with their teammates, but this was the first opportunity they got to share and hear different experiences across the grade level. So we took all of that data, we ran 5 different groups, so it was 5 different groups but 3 different times. They were run by the social workers, school psychologists, the school counselors, and myself. And we compiled all of the data into sort of some big takeaways, which I'll share with you. The biggest challenge that they felt was a lack of some sort of universal or set of universal expectations. And so the parent in 1st grade had a different experience than the parent in 3rd grade. And sometimes that was very confusing. They didn't quite know where to go and where to look for information. So they really felt that something that was much more universal would have been more helpful. Keeping up with the constant changes, whether it be changes in technology, changes in expectations, that was very difficult for them. Lack of connecting with each other as well. They have their grade level team, but sometimes if your best friend was more on that 4th grade team and you're on the 3rd grade team, they didn't get to see each other as often. And then really keeping all students engaged. They had some where the parents were videotaping their child doing a particular lesson and sending it in, saying, was this right? Did I do well? And then some obviously who didn't have any sort of contact either. So that was also a big challenge. So in the future, things that they would love to have or love to see is they would love to have more group meetings with the students. They saw other districts being able to meet in small groups or even full group with all of their students at one time, where they were in our school limited to 1 student at a time. They would love to be able to see more groups. They really feel that children learn best from each other and being able to have those rich discussions, as Ryan was talking about with the reading program. So they'd like to have some opportunity for that. Obviously, that universal structure. They'd also like to see the equitable access for all. Again, they saw some students who had very rich internet and didn't have a problem, and then some students who didn't have internet at all. And that also goes for the teachers as well. And something that was pointed out to me in a couple different groups is we had some teachers sitting in the McDonald's parking lot in order to participate online. that their own internet was so spotty, that they were often driving and sitting in parking lots working. And I had no idea that was going on, so I thought that was really very rich to share. And they like to be continued to ask for their feedback. They want to be part of this process. It's very important for their own emotional development. Positives that they saw is that they felt that they improved in their technology skills more than they ever thought they could possibly improve. One teacher said, I've never heard the word Zoom before, never. And she's like, now I'm living on Zoom 8 hours a day. So that was great. Lots of shout outs to Dan and his entire technology team for everything they were doing, whether it be putting videos online, helping teachers learn and navigate the technology, whether it's just the phone call saying, I have no idea what I'm doing, please help me. And so the tech team was great. The other thing that we were doing during this time is that Eileen and Ryan were having weekly meetings with their grade level teams, just to be able to talk about instruction or what was happening in the grade level. And they said more than anything, they valued that time with their administrator, that they would have never been able to have that opportunity. So they said, some way, somehow, could we please keep those meetings going, because that was really great. And in PLC, I think that's going to happen. They really valued the deeper relationships that they saw with their students. They got to know their students very well, whether it be what pajamas do they wear at night, or their cat, or their dog, or what movie they were watching, so they really valued those. And then finding those new educational resources, things that they never knew existed out there, but this really pushed them to become somewhat a new teacher, and that was really cool. So it was really great to be able to debrief with the team before the end of the year. We're also continuing the Research to Practice for Inclusive Communities grant work, the RPIC grant, as we like to say. We had our last meeting for the school year. And this last meeting, we really decided to focus on 3 of our core values, 3 of our beliefs in our district. So we have approximately 12 beliefs. We sort of narrowed those down as a district administration team to say, no matter what we do is going forward, what are the 5 values we feel we're always going to be working on? And then as a team, we really drilled that down to 3. And we decided to focus on these values. And when we say focus on them, we say that as we move our work forward, we're always using these values to guide our work and question, does this make sense in our value? The 3 we are going to focus on is learning thrives in a positive, safe, caring, and respectful environment for children and adults. Really, that's our SEL. Sound educational decisions are based on what is best for children's learning and development. And that's where we're really going to be implementing the PLC work next year. And then finally, every person is capable of continuous learning. And that's the equity focus we have. So kind of fell down into those 3 quite nicely. So that's the work that we finished off, and we'll be picking up again at the end of July when our team goes off to the Inclusive Community seminars with Elise Ventura. And typically would be Madison Bethel.
That's great. Thank you.
Summer school? Yep. Andy? So I just want to kind of give an update on summer school right now. So right now we're tentatively having virtual summer school, and it's going to be held July 13th to July 24th. It's going to be about 2 weeks. Our registration right now is open until June 28th. Allie Schmidt, again, once again, is the summer school coordinator. She does a good job organizing all the different classes and getting the packets up to parents. And this year, Pam Llewellyn is going to be the summer school director. Right now, we're offering 7 classes virtually for students 1 through 5th, and then 8 classes 1 through 8. The reason for is band. We're offering a band. We just recently said this past week you'd like to give individual band lessons, and so we added that very last minute within the last week. Some of the classes that right now are being offered are a STEM creation room, digital escape room challenges, crafty kids, solving problems with math, road trip across America, and cooking up edible creations. And all of these are going to be enrichment type classes. They're really just supposed to be fun and have students just give them an opportunity to do something fun throughout the summer. One of the things is we only do have 8 teachers are only doing it. Typically we had about 20 do it. However, the amount of classes that are being offered students is actually around the same. Typically, students are only getting 7 to 8 choices anyway, and they could only, in the past, they can only pick 4 classes to do. This year, because it's virtual, they can pick between one class or they could do 7 classes. It's really completely up to them and how they want to do that. We are planning, if we continue to go forward with it, it's scheduled for July 9th in the evening. There are going to be some classes that obviously Chromebooks and technology that are different resources that they might need. And there's no fee right now for summer school. However, a few classes are going to charge a one-time consumable fee. And that way you would see that information in the class descriptions found within the summer school brochure. And those are typical, like looking for edible creations and like for crafty kids and things, $5. One of the things we recognize too as a district and as an administration team that virtual learning is not always the best for all students, it's very difficult. And we know that gap is probably increased. And one of the things we're looking at potentially doing in August, potentially is doing a step-up program, because traditionally in the past we have like a getting ready for kindergarten, getting ready for first grade. We're looking at potentially doing that in person in August if that would work out. Part of the reason kindergarten wasn't really involved, we kind of talked between me and Connie about that, kindergarten initially involved with enrichment, is that would require a lot of time and energy on the parent side, specifically the kindergarten class to do that. So we're looking at potentially doing something in the first 2 weeks of August as a step-up program for that. We're saying potentially because we're trying to figure out how many teachers would obviously be interested in that. And right now, too, registration is rather low. So typically, we've had about 300 students. As of right now, we're at about 32. And again, I think part of that is too. I think there's a couple factors that I think some parents are obviously they're busy and they're going back to work, and obviously with it being virtual, there's a lot bigger time commitment on the parent side to be involved with that, especially in that K4, K3 grade level. And that traditionally in the past with those 300 kids, I would say 200 of those kids were usually in that K4 level. So I think that's part of the reason we're seeing it so low. And I think quite honestly, some parents are probably just burned out with it. That's understandable too. So that's where we're at right now, and that's why we're saying it's all potentially there. So I don't know if you have anything else to add, Dr. Bullock.
No, I mean, one of the challenges is that in the past, summer school was actually kind of brought some additional funds to the district to help offset some of the costs that we had during the school year. So to a certain extent, it was a money maker. There's no question it will not be a money maker for us. We're trying hard to make it not be a money maker for us, so that it actually takes away resources from what we're able to do in the school year. And so if we do make a decision potentially not to move forward with it, it would be with an understanding that there are going to be some significant additional costs for us for next year, whether it be custodian, whether it be some of our staff, some of those things. And so I hate to put us in a position where we're spending significantly on summer school programming to the point where it becomes a detriment for our school. So that's why it's one of those things that we'll take a look at. All right, committee reports. We had the one committee that met, that was June 16th. Really the topics that we covered were the reading program, which we talked about tonight. We talked about the summer school program, which we just got done talking about, and we talked about kind of preliminary planning for next year. So there really isn't anything to that other than the rich discussion that occurred in those committees in preparation for the board. Going forward, I'm not recommending at this point that policy and community relations. I'm going to hold that out there. I met this morning with Neola. We went through kind of those policies that we need to update. There's the need to, there's some of those that we might like to. So that one, when I get some of those back, I'm not sure the timeline from the work that we did this morning. We got a little finish up work to do. Then we may set a policy committee at that point. Board meetings coming up. Regular school board meeting is Tuesday, July 28th at 7 p.m. We talked about scheduling a special board meeting, kind of a retreat format, topic being kind of board operations, committees, bylaws, may well be some planning around next year, kind of getting board perspectives on that. So somewhere maybe in that second week third week of July. And I don't know if that's a date that you want to set tonight, or if that's a date you want me to send some kind of preliminary dates out and then get feedback and then set that board meeting.
I think with Lisa not here tonight,
Then
then
we'll send some dates.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would.
I'll send out some dates to board members to kind of look to see, you know, I would say that that may be a little longer meeting. It might almost be like, you know, potentially an afternoon or, you know, kind of afternoon. Kind of break up and break. So unbelievably, that's all I have. Yeah. Talk about a marathon board meeting. Wow. And he told me these board meetings would be so weighty every month.
Usually June is, so. Good time.
Yeah, I mean, almost literally 20 minutes long. That's long.
I bet that's what it was last year.
That was pre-coronavirus, pre-pandemic, pre.
Okay, I move to adjourn the meeting at 9:23.
Second.
All those in favor, Jack?
Aye.
Nick?
Aye.
Steve?
Aye.
And Dana, aye. We are adjourned.
And thank you again, Eileen, for.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jack. Bye.
Bye, Jack.
Bye.